My family invited my ex-husband to Thanksgiving and told me, "You can come, if you keep your mouth shut and don't ruin it for Greg." I smiled, "Enjoy your dinner." 5 days later, my mom called me screaming, "The bank took everything. He ruined us. Please fix it." Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. The phone felt radioactive in my hand. I was sitting at my mahogany desk, surrounded by stacks of tax returns and audit reports, the typical scenery for a late November evening in Grand Rapids. The heating vent was rattling, fighting against the Michigan chill, but the cold I felt in that moment had nothing to do with the weather. It was coming straight from the voice on the other end of the line. "Diane, are you listening to me?" My mother, Joyce, had that tone she always used when she was about to ask for something unreasonable but wanted to frame it as a favor. I said, "Greg is bringing the turkey this year. A free-range one, from that organic farm he's working with." I took a slow breath, staring at the framed photo of my grandmother on my desk. "Greg is coming to Thanksgiving," I repeated, my voice flat. "Mom, we've been divorced for 18 months. The divorce decree is finalized. He's not family anymore." "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Diane," she snapped. "Greg doesn't have anyone else in town. His parents are in Florida, you know that. Besides, he's been such a help to me lately. He fixed the gutter on the garage just last week. He's family in spirit, if not on paper." Family in spirit. The man who had cheated on me with his secretary, drained our joint savings account to pay off his gambling debts, and then told the judge I was financially abusive because I controlled the budget. That man was family in spirit. "I'm not coming if he's there," I said. It was the first time I had ever drawn a line that hard with my mother. Usually, I was the peacemaker. I was the one who wrote the checks, smoothed over the arguments, and absorbed the passive-aggressive comments like a sponge. There was a pause on the line. A heavy, judgmental silence that I knew well. "Well," my mother said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming icy. "That is your choice, I suppose. But listen to me closely, Diane. If you do decide to show up, you are not to make a scene. You are not to bring up the past, or your little grievances. Greg has had a hard year. He's trying to get back on his feet. You can come, but only if you keep your mouth shut and don't ruin it for Greg." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. "Ruin it for Greg? Mom, I'm your daughter. I'm the one who paid for your hip surgery last year. I'm the one who manages your retirement fund. And you always hold that over my head," she cried out, playing the victim card instantly. "You think money buys loyalty? Greg gives me his time, Diane. He listens to me. You're always so busy with your numbers and your clients. You're cold. Greg is warm. He's trying. So, if you can't be supportive, maybe it's best you just stay in your fancy apartment with your cat." The room seemed to spin. It wasn't just rejection, it was replacement. They hadn't just taken his side, they had slotted him into the vacancy left by my dignity. "You're choosing him," I whispered. "You are choosing the man who betrayed your daughter over your daughter." "I'm choosing peace, Diane," she said, dismissive. "I'm choosing a Thanksgiving where everyone smiles. Greg makes us smile. You just make us feel judged. So, are you coming to behave, or are you staying home?" I looked out the window at the gray skyline. I thought about the hours I spent managing her finances, the late-night calls when she was lonely, the sacrifices I made to be the good daughter. And I realized, in that moment, that the ledger was unbalanced. It had been unbalanced for 42 years. "Don't worry, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I wouldn't want to ruin Greg's big day. Enjoy the organic turkey." I didn't wait for her response. I ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there for a long time, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in my pristine, empty apartment. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt a hot flash of humiliation crawl up my neck. They didn't want me. They wanted the idea of a happy family, and apparently, my ex-husband played the role of the dutiful son better than I played the role of the provider daughter. I reached for the framed photo of the entire family, Mom, my sister Brenda, me, and Greg, taken 2 years ago at the lake house. Greg had his arm around Mom, charming her, while I stood a little to the side, checking my work email on my phone. I looked at that picture, really looked at it, for the first time. I wasn't part of the circle even then. I was just the financier. The background noise. With a sudden burst of energy, I grabbed the photo and walked to the kitchen. I didn't throw it. I wasn't going to be the dramatic woman they accused me of being. Instead, I calmly opened the trash can and slid it in, face down. Okay, I said aloud to the empty room. You want him? You can have him. But as I walked back to my desk, a thought nagged at me. Greg never did anything for free. He didn't fix gutters out of the goodness of his heart. He didn't visit lonely old ladies for the conversation. Greg was a parasite. And if he was embedded that deep in my mother's life, he wasn't just looking for a turkey dinner. He was feeding. I sat back down at my computer and opened a new browser window. I typed in the password to verify my mother's bank activity, access I had as her financial power of attorney, or at least, I thought I still did. The screen loaded. Access denied. Password changed. The blood drained from my face. I tried again. Access denied. My mother couldn't change a password to save her life. She still wrote them down on sticky notes under her keyboard. Someone else had changed it. Oh, you didn't, I whispered. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this story. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. I'm Diane, and I'm about to tell you how I burned my bridges to light the way forward. To understand why my mother changed that password, you have to understand the dynamic of the Miller household. It didn't start with Greg. It started the day I was born, or more accurately, the day I wasn't born a boy. Growing up in Grand Rapids, family was everything. We went to church every Sunday, we had potlucks, we smiled at neighbors we didn't like. My mother, Joyce, was the queen of appearances. She wanted the perfect house, the perfect lawn, and the perfect children. I tried. God knows, I tried. I was the valedictorian. I went to business school. I became a certified public accountant, CPA, before I turned 25. I followed every rule. I thought that if I was successful enough, if I was useful enough, I would finally earn the warmth she seemed to reserve for other people. But my success only seemed to alienate her. When I got my promotion to senior partner, she said, "That's nice, Diane, but don't work too hard. You'll get wrinkles, and no man wants a wrinkled wife." Then there was my sister, Brenda. For years younger, chaotic, and perpetually in need of rescue. Brenda never finished college. She had a string of bad boyfriends and an adorable daughter she raised on alimony and my loans that never got paid back. Yet, Brenda was the fun one. Brenda was the one Mom laughed with in the kitchen while I was in the living room doing their taxes. And then came Greg. I met Greg at a mixer. He was charming, handsome in a rugged way, and seemed to listen. I was 36, lonely, and tired of being strong all the time. He swept me off my feet. Or rather, he identified a target and deployed a strategy. When I introduced him to the family, it was like the son my mother never had walked through the door. Greg knew exactly which buttons to push. He complimented Mom's dry pot roast. He teased Brenda about her hair in a way that made her giggle. He fixed the loose hinge on the front door within 10 minutes of arriving. I watched from the sidelines, feeling a mix of relief and jealousy. Relief that they liked him, jealousy that he had cracked the code I had been banging my head against for decades. "He's a keeper," Diane, Mom had whispered to me that first Thanksgiving. "Don't mess this up. He's too good for you. Too good for me." That was the narrative. Over the 6 years of our marriage, I became the bank, and Greg became the mascot. I paid the mortgage, the car payments, the insurance, and the vacations. Greg was a freelance consultant, which is a fancy term for unemployed with a business card. He bounced between schemes, flipping houses, selling supplements, day trading. None of it made money. All of it cost me. But to my family, he was a hero. "Greg came over and mowed the lawn today," Mom would tell me on the phone. "He's such a hard worker. You should appreciate him more." "I pay the landscaping service, Mom," I'd remind her. "Oh, you and your money," she'd scoff. "Money is cold, Diane. Greg puts in the sweat." That was the dynamic. I was the safety net, Greg was the trapeze artist they wanted to watch. I was necessary, but boring. He was useless, but entertaining. I remember one Christmas, I bought Mom a state-of-the-art washer and dryer set because hers was breaking down. It cost me $2,000. She looked at it and said, "Oh, thank you, dear. It's very practical." 10 minutes later, Greg handed her a wrapped box. Inside was a cheap, gaudy necklace he'd probably bought at a mall kiosk with my credit card. She gasped. She teared up. She put it on immediately and paraded around the living room. "Look what Greg got me. He has such taste." I stood there by the washing machine, holding a glass of eggnog, feeling like I was invisible. I looked at Greg, and he winked at me. A smug, knowing wink. He knew. He knew he didn't have to provide anything real. He just had to provide the illusion of adoration. The emotional neglect I experienced wasn't violent. It was a slow erosion. It was being the designated driver while everyone else got drunk on affection. It was being the one they called when the bill came due, but the one they forgot to invite to the party. So, when the divorce happened, I foolishly thought the truth would matter. I thought that once I revealed Greg was a liar and a cheat, the spell would break. I thought blood was thicker than water. I was wrong. In my family, flattery was thicker than anything. And now, sitting in my apartment, staring at that access-denied screen, I realized the erosion was complete. Greg hadn't just taken my place at the table, he had taken my place as the trusted guardian of the family assets. My mother was 68. She had a substantial nest egg from my father's life insurance and years of my careful management. Brenda was broke. And Greg? Greg was a shark smelling blood in the water. I wasn't just hurt anymore. My CPA brain was kicking into gear. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by the cold, hard logic of an audit. If Greg was managing her passwords, he wasn't doing it to help her pay the electric bill. He was doing it to hide the transactions. I picked up a pen and a fresh legal pad. "Okay, golden boy," I muttered, writing his name at the top of the page. "Let's see what you're really up to." The end of my marriage wasn't a tragedy, it was a cliché. I came home early from a tax seminar in Chicago. I didn't suspect anything. In fact, I had stopped at a bakery to pick up Greg's favorite cannoli. I walked into our house, the house I bought before we met, the house I paid the mortgage on, and found a lace bra on the living room floor. It wasn't mine. I wear sensible beige cotton, this was red satin. I found them in our bed. Greg and his administrative assistant, a 22-year-old girl named Kaylee who thought Greg was a venture capitalist. The screaming match that followed was predictable. He blamed me. He said I was emasculating. He said I worked too much. He said I treated him like an employee, not a husband. Maybe if you contributed to the household income, I wouldn't have to work 60 hours a week. I had yelled. See, he sneered, pulling on his pants. It's always about money with you. You have no heart, Diane. That's why your mother prefers me. That stung more than the infidelity. I filed for divorce the next day. I expected a war, but Greg surprised me. He rolled over. He didn't fight for the house. He didn't ask for alimony, mostly because my lawyer, Robert, had proof of his infidelity and his gambling debts. We settled quickly. I kept my assets, he kept his car, which I paid off, and he moved into a crappy apartment on the south side of town. I thought I had one. I thought I had cut the cancer out. But Greg was playing a longer game. While I was burying myself in work to cope with the humiliation, Greg was busy working the phones. He called my mother every day. He went over to help Brenda with her kids. He spun a narrative that was so masterful, I almost admired it. He didn't deny the cheating. Oh no, that would be too easy to disprove. Instead, he contextualized it. He told them he was broken. He told them he made a mistake because he was so lonely. He told them I had emotionally abandoned him years ago. He cried, actual tears, in my mother's kitchen. I just wanted to feel loved, he told them. Diane, she's like a machine. She doesn't need anyone. But I'm human. I messed up, Joyce, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But please, don't cut me out. You're the only real mother I've ever had. It was a weaponized sob story targeting my mother's deepest insecurity, the fear of being unneeded. I didn't need her. I was independent. But Greg? Greg was a wounded bird that needed her soup and her validation. So, the invite to Thanksgiving wasn't a sudden decision. It was the culmination of 18 months of grooming. But there was one detail that kept nagging me as I made my list of assets at risk. When Greg moved out, he accidentally kept a set of keys to my mother's house. I had asked Mom to change the locks. Oh, Diane, don't be paranoid, she had said. Greg would never hurt me. Besides, what if I fall and can't get to the door? It's good for him to have a key. At the time, I let it go. I was too exhausted to fight. Now, thinking about the password change, that key felt like a dagger. And then there was the gas station incident. 2 months ago, I was reviewing my mother's credit card statement, back when I still had access. I noticed a charge for $40 at a gas station on the other side of town, near where Greg lived. My mother didn't drive that far. She barely drove to the grocery store. When I asked her about it, she got defensive. Oh, Greg took my car to get it washed and filled it up for me. He's such a gentleman. Did he pay you back? I asked. He forgot his wallet, Diane. It was $40. You make more than that in 10 minutes. Stop counting pennies. I dropped it. But now, I realized it wasn't about $40. It was a test. He was testing the waters, seeing what he could get away with. Seeing if I was watching. Seeing if she would defend him. She did. And now, the sharks were circling. I looked at my notepad. 1. Bank accounts. 2. Retirement fund. 3. The house. And then, my blood ran cold. 4. The lake house. Grandma's cottage. It wasn't just a piece of property. It was the only place in the world where I felt safe. The only place where I wasn't Diane the CPA or Diane the disappointment. It was titled to me and Brenda as tenants in common. My mother had a life estate, meaning she could use it, but she didn't own it. But if Greg had access to Mom, and he was cozying up to Brenda. I grabbed my car keys. It was 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I needed to see what was happening, and I couldn't do it from behind a screen. I needed physical evidence. I grabbed my coat and headed out into the freezing Michigan night. I wasn't going to the lake house, not yet. I was going to the one place where secrets usually ended up before they were shredded. I was going to my mother's house. The drive to my mother's house in the affluent suburb of East Grand Rapids usually took 20 minutes. Tonight, I made it in 15. The streets were lined with barren oak trees, their skeletal branches reaching up into the dark sky like grasping fingers. As I drove, my mind drifted to the lake house. It sat on a bluff overlooking Lake Michigan, about 2 hours north. It wasn't a mansion, just a weathered cedar-shake cottage with a wraparound porch and a stone fireplace that smelled of wood smoke and old memories. My grandmother, Rose, had left it to Brenda and me when she passed 10 years ago. Grandma Rose was the only person who truly saw me. She was a tough woman, a widow who ran her own bakery. She told me once, "Diane, having a man is a luxury. Having your own money is a necessity. Never confuse the two." She knew Mom was weak. She knew Brenda was flighty. So she made me the executor of her estate and put the cottage in a trust where I had primary management rights, though Brenda and I were equal beneficiaries. For a decade, I had paid the property taxes. I paid for the new roof when the winter storms tore the shingles off. I paid for the septic tank repairs. Brenda never contributed a dime. Her excuse was always, "You know things are tight right now, Dee. I'll get you next time." Next time never came. I didn't mind paying. It was my sanctuary. It was where I went to breathe. But recently, things had been weird regarding the cottage. A month ago, I received an email from a contractor I didn't know. It was a quote for a complete kitchen remodel and deck expansion for the lake house address. The quote was for $60,000. I had called the contractor immediately. I didn't request this quote, I told him. Oh, the man sounded confused. A Mr. Greg Miller called us. He said he was the property manager. He met us out there last week to walk the property. Greg. Using my last name. Walking my property. I had shut it down, obviously. I told the contractor Greg had no authority and to lose the number. Then I called Greg, furious. He didn't answer. I called Mom, and she brushed it off. Oh, Greg was just dreaming, Diane. He has such great vision. He said if we updated the kitchen, we could rent it out on Airbnb for thousands a week. He's just trying to help the family build wealth. I don't want to rent it out, I had snapped. And he has no right to be there. You're so possessive, she had sighed. Now, as I turned onto my mother's street, that memory took on a sinister shape. A renovation loan. Airbnb income. Greg wasn't just dreaming. He was looking for collateral. I pulled up a few houses down from my mother's place and killed the engine. Her house was dark, except for the blue flicker of the television in the living room. Mom fell asleep watching QVC every night at 8:30. I wasn't going to knock. If I knocked, she'd put up her walls. She'd lie. I needed to know what was happening before I confronted her. I sat in the dark car, watching. My heart was racing. This felt insane. I was a respected professional, a 42-year-old woman, stalking my own mother. But desperation makes you do strange things. Then, I saw it. A car pulled into my mother's driveway. A beat-up Honda Civic. Greg's car. I ducked lower in my seat. Greg got out. He wasn't wearing his working man flannel. He was wearing a sharp jacket. He walked to the front door, but he didn't knock. He used a key. He let himself in. My stomach dropped. It was 9:30 p.m. Why was my ex-husband letting himself into my elderly mother's house at night? I watched the windows. The light in the den turned on, the room where Mom kept her filing cabinet and her computer. He wasn't there to fix a leak. He was there to work on the books. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then 20. Finally, the light in the den went off. Greg came out, carrying a thick manila envelope. He looked around the quiet street, a predator checking the wind, then got into his car and backed out. I waited until his taillights disappeared around the corner. I had to get into that house. I had to see what he had taken, or what he had left behind. But I couldn't risk waking Mom. She was a light sleeper, and if she caught me, she'd accuse me of harassing her angel Greg. Then I remembered. Tuesday was trash day. Tomorrow morning. Which meant the bins were already at the curb. It was undignified. It was gross. It was something a raccoon would do. I stepped out of my luxury SUV, pulled up the collar of my coat, and walked silently to the curb in front of my childhood home. The recycling bin was full. I started digging. Newspapers. Junk mail. QVC catalogs. Empty soup cans. And then, near the bottom, shredded paper. Not cross-shredded, just torn in half, as if someone was in a hurry or just lazy. Greg was always lazy. I grabbed the handfuls of torn paper and shoved them into my pockets. I kept digging. I found an envelope from the bank. It was crumpled up. I smoothed it out under the street lamp. It was addressed to Joyce Miller. It was marked urgent second notice. I didn't read the details there. I shoved it in my coat. I grabbed the recycling bin lid and closed it gently. I practically ran back to my car. My hands were shaking, dirty with newsprint and coffee grounds. I drove to a 24-hour diner 3 miles away, ordered a black coffee, and dumped the contents of my pockets onto the laminate table. It was time to solve the puzzle. The diner was empty except for a trucker eating pie in the corner and a waitress who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. She poured my coffee without asking and walked away. I smoothed out the crumpled letter first. It was from Lakeside Credit Union, a predatory lender known for high-interest personal loans. Dear Ms. Miller, we are writing concerning the outstanding balance of $15,000 on your personal line of credit ending in 4492. As per our agreement, the introductory rate has expired, and the interest has adjusted to 24.99%. Please remit payment immediately to avoid. I stared at the paper. My mother didn't have a line of credit at Lakeside. She banked with Chase. I managed her accounts. I knew every penny. $15,000. Where did that come from? And more importantly, where did it go? My hands trembled as I reached for the torn pieces of paper. It was like a jigsaw puzzle from hell. I started matching edges, aligning text. Power of attorney. Hereby grant Gregory Thomas Miller full authority to manage, sell, or encumber real estate, specifically the property located at. I felt bile rise in my throat. It was a draft. A draft of a durable power of attorney. And not just for finances. It specifically mentioned real estate. I pieced together another document. This one looked like an email printout. From Greg Miller to Easy Cash Lenders. Subject: collateral for lakefront project. My mother-in-law is on board. We can use her primary residence equity to bridge the gap until we get the liquidity from the vacation home. I'll have the signatures by Thursday. Thursday. Thanksgiving was Thursday. The timeline clicked into place with terrifying precision. The invite. The keep your mouth shut warning. The sudden password change. He wasn't just coming for dinner. He was coming to close the deal. He was going to get my mother, my confused, lonely, Greg-worshipping mother, to sign over control of her finances and potentially leverage her house. And the vacation home he mentioned? That was my cottage. But he couldn't leverage the cottage without my signature. I owned 50%. Brenda owned 50%. Mom just had rights to use it. Unless. I pulled up my phone and dialed the one number I knew I shouldn't call at 11 p.m., but I had no choice. Hello? A groggy voice answered. It was Brenda. Brenda, don't hang up, I said, my voice tight. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth for once in your life. Diane? It's the middle of the night. Are you drunk? Has Greg asked you to sign anything? Anything about the cottage? There was a pause. A long, guilty pause. He's helping us, Diane, Brenda said, her voice defensive but shaky. He's got a plan. We're sitting on a gold mine and you're just letting it rot. We need money. I need money. The kids need braces. My car needs a transmission. Brenda, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. What did you sign? I didn't sign the deed over, she snapped. I signed a quitclaim deed to an LLC he set up. He said it protects us from liability if we rent it out. He said he's going to buy me out of my share with the profits from the business loan. I closed my eyes. A quitclaim deed. She transferred her ownership to a company Greg controlled. What is the name of the LLC, Brenda? Miller Family Holdings, I think. Look, he said you'd be mad because you want to control everything. But Mom said it was okay. Mom said Greg is the man of the house now. Greg is stealing from us, Brenda. I shouted, causing the trucker in the corner to look up. He's taking a loan out against Mom's house and he's using your share of the cottage as collateral for something else. If he defaults, and he will default, you lose your share. Mom loses her house. You're just jealous, Brenda spat back. You're jealous because he moved on and because Mom likes him better. Just leave us alone, Diane. We're signing the final papers for the business loan on Thursday at dinner. Don't ruin it. Click. She hung up. I sat there, the dead phone in my hand, looking at the scraps of paper on the table. They were signing on Thursday. Thanksgiving Day. He was going to serve turkey and serve them bankruptcy papers disguised as a business opportunity. He had Brenda's share. He had Mom's trust and her credit cards. He was about to get Mom's house. But he didn't have me. I looked at the date on the power of attorney draft. It wasn't signed yet. That was likely the final paper for Thursday. I had less than 48 hours. I gathered the scraps of paper and shoved them into my purse. I left a $20 bill on the table for the coffee I didn't drink. I walked out of the diner into the freezing wind. I wasn't cold anymore. I was burning with a rage so pure it felt like rocket fuel. I needed an ally. I couldn't go to Mom, she was brainwashed. I couldn't go to Brenda, she was greedy and desperate. I needed someone who hated Greg as much as I did. Someone who knew where the bodies were buried. I needed Aunt Margaret. My Aunt Margaret lived in a trailer park about 10 miles south of town. She was my mother's older sister, but they couldn't be more different. Mom was pearls and passive aggression, Margaret was unfiltered cigarettes and hard truths. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, ever since Margaret told Mom that Greg had eyes like a rat looking for cheese. I pulled up to her double-wide at midnight. The lights were on. Margaret was a night owl. I knocked. Who is it? I got a shotgun, her gravelly voice yelled. It's Diane. Joyce's daughter. The door swung open. Margaret stood there in a floral kaftan, holding a lit cigarette, looking me up and down. Well, hell. The prodigal accountant returns. You look like you've seen a ghost, kid. Worse, I said. I saw Greg letting himself into Mom's house. She stepped aside. Get in here. I got whiskey. 10 minutes later, I had laid everything out on her tiny kitchen table. The bank notice, the shredded POA, the conversation with Brenda. Margaret listened, smoking silently, her eyes narrowing through the haze. When I finished, she slammed her hand on the table. That son of a bitch, she growled. I knew it. I knew he was a grifter the minute he walked into the family barbecue wearing those loafers without socks. He's going to ruin them, Margaret, I said. Brenda signed over her half of the cottage to an LLC. Mom is about to sign a power of attorney on Thursday. He's already maxed out a line of credit in Mom's name. And let me guess, Margaret said, pouring me a shot of Jack Daniels. Joyce thinks he's the second coming of Jesus. Exactly. She told me not to come to Thanksgiving unless I keep my mouth shut. Margaret laughed, a dry, hacking sound. Classic Joyce. She'd rather lose her house than admit she made a bad judgment call about a man. She's been like that since we were girls. Daddy issues. I need to stop him, I said. But I don't have proof of the fraud yet. I mean, Brenda signed willingly. Mom gave him the passwords willingly. Being stupid isn't illegal. No, Margaret said, a wicked glint in her eye. But intentions matter. And I might have something that proves his intentions aren't exactly noble. She got up and walked to a clutter of junk on her counter. She dug around and pulled out an old iPhone with a cracked screen. About 3 months ago, she said, tapping the screen. Greg came here. Here? I was shocked. Why? He thought he could charm me, too. Or maybe he thought I was as senile as your mother. He came asking for a short-term loan. Said he had a sure-thing investment. He brought a bottle of expensive bourbon. He drank most of it. She found the file and pressed play. The audio was tinny, but the voice was unmistakable. It was Greg. And he sounded slurred. Old Bat doesn't have a clue, Marge. She thinks I'm fixing the roof? I'm fixing my retirement. A sound of glass clinking. Diane thinks she's so smart with her degrees. But she's cold. Joyce. Joyce just wants a son. I give her a hug, tell her she looks pretty, and she hands over the checkbook. It's pathetic, really. I felt sick. Hearing him say it, hearing the contempt in his voice, was visceral. And the sister? Margaret's voice on the recording asked. Brenda? Greg laughed. Brenda is a mess. I tell her she's pretty, promise her a cut of the action, and she'll sign anything. Once I get the property leveraged, I'm gone. Florida, maybe. Or Belize. Let them fight over the debt. The recording ended. I stared at the phone. You had this? Why didn't you tell me? I called your mother the next day, Margaret said, extinguishing her cigarette. She told me I was a jealous old hag and that Greg told her I tried to hit on him. She blocked my number. Of course he did. He inoculated them against the truth. This is it, I said, my lawyer brain firing. This proves intent to defraud. It proves premeditation. If I play this for Mom, she won't believe it, Margaret cut in. She'll say it's AI. Or she'll say he was drunk and didn't mean it. You can't just show her the truth, Diane. You have to let her face the consequences. You have to let the trap snap shut. I can't let her lose the house, Margaret. No, Margaret agreed. But you can let her get scared enough to wake up. And you can save the cottage. That's your legacy, not hers. She pushed the phone toward me. Take it. Send it to your lawyer. But listen to me, Diane. Don't go to that dinner. If you go, he'll spin it. He'll make you the villain. Stay away. Let him overplay his hand. He's getting cocky. The cocky ones always slip up when they think nobody is watching. I took the phone. I'm not going to dinner, I said, a plan forming in my mind. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to follow the money. Margaret grinned. That's my girl. Now, finish your whiskey. You've got a busy day tomorrow. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving is usually the busiest travel day of the year. For me, it was the busiest day of my career, and I wasn't even at the office. I met my private investigator, a retired cop named Sal who I used for complex audits, at a coffee shop at 7 a.m. I played him the recording. I showed him the documents. I need to know about Miller Family Holdings LLC, I said. And I need to know about this Easy Cash Lenders. Sal called me back 3 hours later. I was in my car, parked a block away from the bank where my mother held her accounts. It's bad, Diane, Sal said. Miller Family Holdings was incorporated 2 weeks ago. Sole member, Greg Miller. Brenda isn't even on the filing. If she signed a quitclaim deed to that LLC, she didn't transfer it to a partnership. She gave it to him. 100%. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. She thinks she's a partner. She's a victim, Sal corrected. And Easy Cash? It's a hard money lender based in Detroit. Predatory rates. They don't care about credit scores, they care about collateral. If Greg has the deed to the cottage and the POA for your mother's house, they'll lend him the money. Probably about 40% of the value. Fast cash. High risk. How much? Based on the comps? Maybe 200 grand on the cottage. Another 100 on your mom's equity. He's looking to walk away with $300,000 in cash by Monday. And the debt stays with the property, I finished. Bingo. If he doesn't pay, and he won't, they foreclose. Your mom loses her home. You lose the cottage. He can't leverage the cottage without my signature, I insisted. I own half. That's the thing, Sal said. I pulled the title report. There's a forged document pending recording. A waiver of interest with your name on it. It looks like it was notarized by a Kaylee_Smith_notary. Kaylee. The mistress. He forged my signature, I whispered. The audacity was breathtaking. He was gambling that I wouldn't check the registry until it was too late. He needed the weekend. He needed the holiday delay. Send me everything, Sal, I said. I'm going to see Robert. Robert was my divorce lawyer, a sharp-tongued man who despised Greg almost as much as I did. When I walked into his office at noon, he took one look at my face and told his assistant to hold his calls. We spent 4 hours drafting. We weren't just drafting a defense, we were drafting a nuke. We have 2 options, Robert said, pacing his office. Option A, we file an emergency injunction today. We stop the dinner. We alert the police. But Mom will deny it, I said. She'll say she authorized him. She'll say I'm interfering. And Greg will claim the forgery was a mistake or destroy the document before it's recorded. Exactly. It becomes a he said, she said family dispute. The police hate those. What's option B? Robert smiled, a shark-like grin. Option B, we let him walk into the bank. We let him present the documents. We let him commit the felony in front of witnesses and federal cameras. But we make sure the money never leaves the vault. How? You're the CPA. You're the original POA, even if she's signing a new one tomorrow. The bank knows you. We go there tomorrow morning, well, Friday morning, since they're closed tomorrow, and we implement a fraud freeze on all associated accounts based on the credible threat of identity theft. We use the forged waiver as proof. But he wants the money on Friday, I said. If he signs the papers tomorrow at dinner. He signs the papers with Mom tomorrow. But he can't get the check until the bank opens Friday. He'll go there first thing. He'll think he's won. And when he tries to cash out, the teller gets a code red alert on the screen. Protocol is to stall and call the police. It was risky. It required timing. It required nerves of steel. What about Brenda? I asked. He's destroying her. Brenda is collateral damage, Robert said gently. But if we stop him, we can unwind the quitclaim deed. If he gets the money and runs, she's ruined forever. I thought about Brenda's voice on the phone. You're just jealous. Okay, I said. Let's do option B. But I need to do one more thing. I need to protect the cottage. I'm going to file a lease pendens on the property right now before the recorder of deeds closes for the holiday. It's a notice of pending litigation. No lender will touch a property with a lease pendens on it. Smart, Robert said. Do it. I left his office with a stack of paperwork that weighed a pound but felt like a shield. I drove to the county building. I filed the notice. I paid the fee. When I walked out, the sun was setting. It was Thanksgiving Eve. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Diane, I hope you've thought about what I said. We're setting the table for 6 people. Greg invited a business partner. It would be nice if you came, but only if you're ready to be happy for us. Let me know. Happy for us. She had no idea she was the sheep inviting the wolf to sharpen his knife at the table. I typed a reply. I won't be there, Mom. I have a lot of work to do. Enjoy the dinner. I hope it's everything you deserve. I hit send. The die was cast. Tomorrow, they would feast. Friday, they would famine. Thanksgiving Day was a surreal blur of silence and tension. While the rest of America was watching football and arguing over politics, I was sitting in my apartment, reviewing the timeline of Greg's destruction. I didn't cook. I ordered Chinese takeout. I spent the day with my cat, watching the clock. I imagined the scene at Mom's house. The smell of turkey. Greg carving the bird, making toasts. Brenda looking at him with adoration, imagining her debts disappearing. Mom beaming, finally having the son she wanted, oblivious to the fact that he was currently in possession of the keys to her financial ruin. The business partner Greg invited was likely the notary, or maybe a representative from the hard money lender to witness the signatures. They were carving up my inheritance along with the pumpkin pie. At 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a picture from Brenda. It was a selfie of the whole group. Mom, Brenda, the kids, Greg, and a greasy-looking man in a suit I didn't recognize. Everyone was smiling. Greg was holding a glass of wine, looking directly at the camera with a smirk that seemed to say, I won. I zoomed in on the table. In the background, on the sideboard, pushed aside near the gravy boat, was a stack of papers. Blue folders. Legal documents. They were doing it. Right now. I felt a wave of nausea, but I forced it down. Let them sign, I told myself. The ink is the evidence. I didn't reply to the text. Friday morning arrived with a gray, steel sky. Black Friday. Appropriate. I was dressed in my sharpest power suit, navy blue, tailored, intimidating. I met Robert at the main branch of the bank at 8:30 a.m. The bank didn't open to the public until 9 o'clock, but Robert knew the branch manager, a woman named Sarah whom I had audited years ago. We were ushered into her office. Diane, Sarah said, looking concerned. Robert said this is an emergency? It is, I said, placing the file on her desk. My ex-husband, Gregory Miller, is going to come in here today. He is going to try to access Joyce Miller's accounts, likely with a fresh power of attorney signed yesterday. He might also try to deposit a large check or initiate a wire transfer related to a property loan. Okay. Sarah opened the file. Her eyes widened as she saw the affidavit of forgery regarding my signature and the transcript of the recording from Aunt Margaret. He is defrauding my mother, I said, my voice steady. He has manipulated her into signing control over to him. We are filing for an emergency guardianship hearing on Monday, but we need to stop the bleeding today. If that money leaves this bank, it's gone. Sarah typed furiously on her keyboard. I see the accounts. Oh my. There's a pending wire transfer request initiated online last night. $50,000 from the home equity line to Miller Family Holdings. Stop it, Robert said. I can flag it for verification, Sarah said. I can require in-person confirmation from the account holder. He'll bring her in, I said. He'll drive Mom here. Good, Robert said. Then we'll be here waiting. Sarah nodded. I'm placing a code 3 on the account. Suspected elder abuse and identity theft. Any transaction requires manager approval. That's me. We sat in the glass-walled office, waiting. The bank opened. People trickled in. At 9:45 a.m., I saw them. Greg's Honda pulled up. He got out, looking confident, wearing a suit that was slightly too shiny. He walked around and opened the passenger door. My mother stepped out. She looked frail, leaning on his arm. She looked happy. She was smiling up at him as he said something that made her laugh. Brenda was with them, trailing behind, looking anxious. They walked into the lobby. I watched from the blinds of the manager's office. Greg walked straight to the teller. He spoke loudly, confidently. We're here to finalize the wire and withdraw some cashier's checks. I have the power of attorney right here. He slammed a folder on the counter. The teller typed something. Her face changed. She looked at the screen, then at Greg. One moment, sir, she said. I need to get a manager for a transaction of this size. Of course, Greg said, checking his watch. Make it quick, we have a lunch reservation. The teller walked over to Sarah's office. She knocked. Sarah looked at me. Ready? I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. I picked up my briefcase. Ready, I said. Sarah opened the door. We walked out into the lobby. Greg's back was to us. He was showing Mom something on his phone. Mr. Miller? Sarah said. Greg turned around, a charming smile plastered on his face. Yes, that's me. We're just. His smile died. It didn't fade, it vanished like a light bulb shattering. He saw me. Standing next to the manager. Standing next to my lawyer. Diane? Mom squinted, confused. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work. I am at work, Mom, I said, my voice carrying through the silent lobby. I'm working on saving you from him. Greg's eyes darted to the door. He took a half step back. What is this? Greg demanded, trying to summon his bravado. Joyce, tell her to leave. This is harassment. I have the power of attorney. It was signed yesterday. That document is invalid, Robert stepped forward. As is the waiver you forged with Diane's signature. Forged? Mom looked at Greg. What are they talking about, Greg? They're lying, Joyce. Greg's voice cracked. They're just jealous. They want to control you. Tell them. Tell them you authorized the transfer. Mom looked between us. She looked scared. Greg, I said, stepping closer. We know about Miller Family Holdings. We know about Easy Cash. We know about Kaylee. And we know you're broke. Shut up. Greg lunged forward, his face turning red. You bitter, barren bit *H. You ruin everything. Brenda gasped. Mom recoiled, shocked by the sudden violence in his tone. Sir, step back. The security guard moved in. The police are on their way, Sarah said calmly. We have flagged the accounts for fraud. Greg looked at the teller, then at the guard, then at me. The realization hit him. The money wasn't coming. The trap had sprung. He didn't scream in horror. He didn't beg. He ran. He shoved past my mother, nearly knocking her over, and bolted for the door. Greg? Mom cried out, reaching for him. Greg, wait! But he didn't look back. He pushed through the glass doors and sprinted toward his car. He's running, Brenda whispered, her face pale. Why is he running? I looked at my mother and sister. They stood there in the lobby, abandoned, holding the empty promises of a con man. I didn't feel happy. I felt a cold, hard satisfaction. Because the check bounced, Mom, I said. And so did he. And then, my mother's phone rang. She answered it with trembling hands. It was the bank, not this one, but the credit card company. What? Mom whispered. Maxed out? That's impossible. Greg said. She dropped the phone. She looked at me, her eyes filling with absolute terror. He took it, she choked out. He took it all. The silence that descended on the bank lobby wasn't peaceful. It was the suffocating, heavy silence of a bomb crater right after the explosion, the split second before the dust settles and the screaming starts. My mother, Joyce, stood frozen in the middle of the plush carpet. Her hand was still extended toward the sliding glass doors where Greg, her angel, her replacement son, the man she had chosen over me time and time again, had just vanished into the parking lot. Her purse had slipped from her shoulder and lay upside down on the floor, spilling a tube of lipstick and a handful of used tissues. It was such a small, pathetic detail, but I couldn't look away from it. The lipstick was red. Greg had told her she looked younger in red. She bought it for him. He forgot his phone, Mom whispered. It was an absurd thing to say. A denial-soaked plea to the universe. She wasn't processing the fraud. She wasn't processing the police sirens that were now wailing in the distance. She was processing the fact that he had left her behind. Then, her knees gave out. I didn't rush to catch her. I couldn't. I was anchored to the spot by a mixture of exhaustion and a cold, hard resolve I had built up over the last 48 hours. It was Frank, the security guard, who caught her before she hit the floor. Mom! Brenda screamed, rushing over from the corner where she had been cowering. Mom, breathe. Somebody help her. I walked over slowly. I didn't kneel. I looked down at them, my mother gasping for air, clutching her chest, and my sister sobbing, her mascara running down her cheeks. They looked like a Renaissance painting of tragedy, framed by the sterile lighting of a bank lobby. Call 911, Sarah, the branch manager, ordered the teller. Possible heart attack. No! Mom gasped, struggling to sit up, her face gray. No police. No ambulance. Greg will be back. He got scared. You scared him, Diane? She looked up at me. Her eyes were full of tears, but beneath the panic, there was still that spark of irrational blame. The same blame she used to give me when I got an A- instead of an A. You brought the police, she wheezed. You embarrassed him. He's sensitive, Diane. Why can't you ever just let things be? I felt a hot flash of anger crawl up my neck. It was so intense it almost blinded me. Even now? Even after he had physically shoved her aside to save his own skin? He shoved you, Mom, I said, my voice cutting through the lobby like a scalpel. He didn't get scared. He got caught. And he didn't run because he was embarrassed. He ran because he is a criminal. Ms. Miller, Sarah stepped in, her voice professional but tight. She was holding a printout. We need to look at this. Now. Before the police detectives arrived to take your statement. She ushered us into a glass-walled conference room. Frank stood by the door. Brenda helped Mom into a chair. I sat at the head of the table. I felt like the CEO of a company that had just filed for bankruptcy. Sarah laid the document down. It was a transaction history for the last 30 days on Mom's primary checking account and the home equity line of credit, the HELIC. The $50,000 wire transfer was stopped, Sarah said. We caught that one thanks to Diane's alert. But... She slid the paper toward Mom. Mom wouldn't look at it. She pushed it away like it was a contagious disease. So I picked it up. My CPA eyes scanned the columns. I have audited failing businesses, corrupt nonprofits, and bankrupt estates. I have never seen a ledger this reckless. November 1st, cash withdrawal, $2,000. November 3rd, transfer to Miller Consulting, $5,000. November 7th, payment to Lakeside Casino, $1,500. November 10th, cash withdrawal, $3,000. It went on and on. Page after page of financial hemorrhaging. He had her debit card, I said, looking at Sarah. And he had the PIN. I gave it to him for groceries. Mom sobbed, her head in her hands. He said he was buying organic food for the holiday. He said he was fixing the roof and needed materials. There is no roof repair, Mom, I said, pointing to a line item. See this? DraftKings. That's sports betting. See this? Sapphire Club. That's a gentleman's club in Detroit. He wasn't buying shingles. He was buying lap dances. Brenda snatched the paper from me. Her hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. She scanned the list, frantic. Where is the money for the LLC? She asked, her voice trembling. The business loan? He said he deposited the seed money on Tuesday. There is no seed money, Brenda, I said softly. Look at the balance. She looked at the bottom line. Balance, minus $412.00, overdraft. HELIC available credit, $0. He maxed it out, Brenda whispered. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking sickly pale. The equity line. Mom's house. He took $80,000? In 3 weeks, Sarah confirmed. It looks like he was structuring the withdrawals to stay just under the $10,000 reporting limit until he got desperate today. The room seemed to spin. My mother had no savings left. Her home equity, her safety net for assisted living, for medical emergencies, for her entire future, was gone. And then, Brenda started to shake. A deep, visceral shudder. The cottage, she choked out. Diane, the cottage. I stopped the loan on the cottage, I said. I filed the lease pendants yesterday. No lender would touch it. No, Brenda said, looking like she was about to vomit. Not the commercial loan. The other thing. What other thing, Brenda? My voice dropped. He said he needed a bridge loan for the materials. 2 weeks ago. Before the LLC was even finalized. He asked me to sign a guarantor form for a personal loan he took out from a private lender. He used the deed copy as proof of assets. You guaranteed a loan? I stood up. How much? 20,000, she whispered. He promised he'd pay it back yesterday. He swore on his mother's grave. I closed my eyes. 20,000 was gone. Brenda, who worked part-time as a receptionist and received barely enough alimony to survive, was on the hook for 20 grand to a private lender. And private lenders aren't banks. They don't send polite letters. He ruined us, Mom whispered. The reality was finally sinking in, heavy and crushing. He's not coming back, is he? No, Mom, I said, picking up my briefcase. He's halfway to the state line. And we have to file a police report right now, or you are liable for every penny of this debt. You have to claim fraud. I can't, Mom wept. I can't send him to jail. He's family. I leaned across the table. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke with the icy precision of a woman who was done being the victim. He is not family. He is a predator. And you have two choices, Joyce. You can file that report and admit you were scammed, and maybe, we can recover some of this from the insurance. Or, you can protect him. But if you protect him, don't you dare ask me for a single dime to pay your electric bill when the power gets cut off next week. Because I am done subsidizing your delusions. Mom looked at me. For the first time in my life, she didn't see the invisible daughter. She saw the only person in the room who could save her. Call the police, she whispered. The precinct smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. It was a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of the bank. We had been there for 4 hours. Detective Miller, no relation, thankfully, was a tired-looking man with grease stains on his tie. He sat across from Mom, clicking his pen. Let me get this straight, Mrs. Miller, he said, looking at his notes. You gave him your debit card. You gave him your PIN. You signed a power of attorney draft, though it wasn't notarized yet. And you allowed him to manage your online banking. I trusted him, Mom said, her voice barely a whisper. She was huddled in her coat, looking small and frail. He was helping me. It's a civil matter, the detective said, closing his notebook. If you authorized him to use the funds, it's not theft. It's a bad business deal between family members. We see this all the time. You gave him access. It's not a civil matter, I interrupted. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the binder I had compiled. The evidence for prosecution binder. I slammed it on the metal table. This, I said, pointing to tab 1, is a transcript of a recording where Greg admits to premeditated fraud to a third party. This, tab 2, is a forged waiver of interest for a property he does not own. He forged my signature. That is a felony. And this, tab 3, is a pattern of structuring withdrawals to evade federal reporting requirements. That is a federal crime. The detective looked at the binder. He opened it. He saw the spreadsheet. He saw the dates. He saw the affidavit from the notary he had compromised. He looked up at me with new respect. You're a lawyer? I'm a CPA, I said. And I did your job for you. Now, are you going to put out an APB for Gregory Miller, or do I need to call the district attorney directly? The detective picked up his phone. I'll get the warrant. The ride home was silent. Brenda drove Mom's car. I followed them in mine. I needed the separation. When we pulled into Mom's driveway, the house looked different. It used to look like a fortress, the place where I was judged and found wanting. Now, it looked like a sinking ship. The gutters Greg had promised to fix were hanging loose. The lawn was overgrown. It was a facade of prosperity covering a rot of debt. I walked Mom to the door. She fumbled with her keys. "Diane," she said, not looking at me. "Do you have any food?" Greg was supposed to go grocery shopping today. My heart broke a little. Not for the mother who rejected me, but for the elderly woman who was hungry. "I'll order you a pizza, Mom," I said. "Can you come in?" she asked. I don't want to be alone. What if he comes back? I stood on the porch. The wind was biting. Part of me, the old Diane, wanted to rush in, make tea, clean up the mess, and tell her everything would be okay. I wanted to be the savior. But I knew that if I stepped over that threshold tonight, I would slide back into the old dynamic. I would be the fixer, and she would learn nothing. "I can't, Mom," I said. "I have to go home and secure my own accounts. Make sure he didn't get to anything of mine. Lock the door. He won't come back here. He knows the police are looking for him." "But I'm scared," she whimpered. "I know," I said. "It's scary when reality hits. I'll call you in the morning." I turned and walked away. I heard her lock the door behind me. Driving back to my apartment, I felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Guilt, yes. But also a fierce, burning pride. I had drawn a line. I had said no. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed. It was Brenda. He's not answering his phone. I tried calling him. I just wanted to ask him why. I stared at the screen. She was still trying to call him. She still wanted closure from a narcissist. I typed back, "He won't answer, Brenda. He doesn't exist anymore. The Greg you knew was a character he played. Delete the number." I put the phone down. But I couldn't relax. The forensic audit I had shown the detective was just the tip of the iceberg. I knew Greg. He was lazy, yes, but he was also a survivor. He wouldn't just run with a few $1,000s in cash. He had a plan B. I opened my laptop. I started searching for Miller Family Holdings LLC again. I dug deeper into public records, looking for anything linked to Greg's social security number. And then I found it. A credit inquiry from 3 days ago. From a car dealership in Ohio. He wasn't just running. He was shopping. And the inquiry wasn't under his name. It was under the name Joyce Miller. He had stolen her identity. He wasn't just draining her current accounts, he was opening new lines of credit in her name across state lines. He was burning her future to fuel his escape. I grabbed my phone. It was 11 p.m. I called Sal, my private investigator. "Sal," I said when he answered. "He's not just in the wind. He's in Ohio. And he's driving a car bought with my mother's credit score. We need to find him before he crosses into Pennsylvania." "I'm on it," Sal said. "But Diane, if he's desperate enough to commit identity theft across state lines, he's not going to go quietly. Be careful." "I'm not the one who needs to be careful," I said, looking at the evidence binder. "He is." Saturday morning broke with a gray, relentless drizzle. I didn't sleep. I spent the night turning my dining room table into a war room. The police had the warrant for the fraud in Michigan, but the identity theft in Ohio was a new beast. I needed to prove it was him, not Mom, who authorized those credit pulls. I printed out Mom's credit report. It was a horror show. In the last 72 hours, there were 5 inquiries. A car loan. 2 credit card applications. A payday loan application online. He was frantically trying to grab cash before the system caught up with him. I went over to Mom's condo, well, the big house she was about to lose, at 8 a.m. I didn't knock, I used my key. The house was cold. She hadn't turned on the heat. She was sitting at the kitchen table, wearing her coat, staring at a stack of mail she had obviously been hiding. "Mom," I said, putting a box of donuts on the table. "We need to work." "I can't," she said, her voice dull. "I just want to sleep." "You can sleep when he's in handcuffs," I said. "Right now, we need to freeze your credit. Do you have your social security card?" She pointed to a pile of papers. "It's in there. Somewhere." I started sorting through the pile. And that's when the true emotional weight of the betrayal hit me. It wasn't just the bank statements. It was the receipts she had kept. I found a receipt for a dinner at a steakhouse. $300. Date, October 14th. I remembered October 14th. It was my birthday. Mom had sent me a text message. No card. No call. She said she was feeling under the weather. But here was the receipt. Steak and lobster for two. Greg. I found a receipt for a pair of diamond earrings. $800. Mom, I held up the receipt. Where are these? She looked away. Greg, he said he needed a gift for a client. He said he'd pay me back. A client? I laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Mom, these were for Kaylee. His mistress. You bought diamonds for the woman he was sleeping with. Mom flinched as if I had slapped her. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. Then I found something that stopped my heart. It wasn't a receipt. It was a letter. Handwritten, on stationery I recognized. It was a letter from me, from 3 years ago. I had written it after a fight we had, trying to explain why I worked so hard, trying to tell her I loved her. I had poured my heart out. The letter was crumpled, stained with coffee rings, and used as a coaster on Greg's side of the desk. He had read it. He had probably laughed at it. And Mom had let him use my vulnerability as a place to set his drink. That was the moment the last thread of hope snapped. I looked at my mother. She wasn't a victim of a mastermind. She was a volunteer in her own destruction because her vanity mattered more than my dignity. Diane? Mom asked, seeing the look on my face. What is it? Nothing, I said, sliding the letter into my pocket. Just trash. I spent the next 3 hours on the phone. Equifax. TransUnion. Experian. I locked everything down. I filed affidavits of identity theft. I disputed the charges. Then Brenda walked in. She looked worse than Mom. Her eyes were red-rimmed. The car is gone, she said, dropping her keys on the counter. What? The repo man, Brenda sobbed. They came at 6 a.m. Greg stopped making the payments on my lease 3 months ago. He told me he was paying it. He was pocketing the money I gave him. You gave him money? I asked. I thought you were broke. I gave him my child support checks, Brenda whispered. He said he would bundle it with his payments to get a better interest rate. I stared at her. You gave a gambling addict your child support? He wasn't an addict to me. Brenda screamed. He was the only person who listened to me. You don't understand, Diane. You have your career. You have your success. I have nothing. He made me feel like I was building something. And what did you build, Brenda? I asked coldly. You built a house of cards on a foundation of lies. And now your kids don't have a car to get to school. I need a ride, she said, looking at me. I need a ride to work. I can't lose this job. I'll drive you, I said. But on the way, you're going to tell me everything about the guarantor loan. Because Sal thinks there's more to it. What do you mean? Sal thinks Greg didn't just borrow money from a bank. He borrowed it from a loan shark. And if you guaranteed it, those sharks are going to come looking for you. Brenda turned white. Get in the car, I said. As we drove, my phone rang. It was Sal. Diane, his voice was tense. I found the car. The one he bought in Ohio. Where is it? It's back in Michigan, Sal said. He turned around. Why would he do that? Because he's not running away anymore, Sal said. He's desperate. He tried to cash a check at a liquor store in Toledo and got denied because you froze the credit. He has no gas money. He has no cash. And he knows there's only one place left where he might find something valuable. Where, Sal? He was spotted heading north on I-75. Diane, he's going to the lake house. My blood ran cold. The lake house. My sanctuary. He thinks there's cash there, Brenda whispered from the passenger seat. Grandma used to keep emergency cash in the floorboards. We told him about it one night when we were drunk. There hasn't been cash there in 10 years. I yelled. I cleared it out. He doesn't know that, Brenda said. And Diane. I think I left my spare key under the mat. I slammed on the brakes. The car screeched to a halt on the shoulder of the road. You left a key? I always leave a key. Brenda cried. Sal, I said into the phone. Call the sheriff in Manistee County. Tell them there's an intruder at my property. I'm on my way. Diane, don't go there, Sal warned. He's cornered. He's dangerous. It's my house, I said. And I'm done letting him take things that belong to me. I pulled a U-turn. I wasn't going to drop Brenda at work. We were going north. The drive to the lake house usually took 2 hours. I made it in 90 minutes. The sky had turned a bruised purple, promising a winter storm. Brenda sat in the passenger seat, gripping the door handle. She hadn't stopped crying since we turned around. He's going to burn it down, she whimpered. If he can't find the money, he'll burn it down out of spite. He told me once, he said if he couldn't have something, nobody could. He's not going to burn it, I said, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Because he thinks the deed is his ticket out. He thinks if he holds the property hostage, I'll pay him off. Will you? Brenda asked. Not a chance in hell. We turned onto the gravel road that led to the cottage. The pine trees closed in around us. It was isolated here. That was always the appeal. Now, it felt like a trap. I saw the Ohio plates first. A brand new Ford Explorer, parked crookedly on my lawn, tearing up the grass I had just reseeded. The front door of the cottage was wide open. Stay in the car, I ordered Brenda. Diane, no. He might have a gun. He doesn't have a gun. He pawned his watch last week, he couldn't afford a gun. I got out. I reached into my glove box and pulled out the tire iron. It wasn't much, but it was heavy. I walked up the porch steps. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was the house where I learned to swim. This was the house where Grandma taught me to bake. I stepped into the living room. It was a wreck. The sofa cushions were slashed. The bookshelves were overturned. He had ripped up the floorboards in the corner, the exact spot Brenda had told him about. Greg! I screamed. It's over. The police are 5 minutes away. There was a crash from the kitchen. Greg stumbled out. He looked deranged. His eyes were wild, his expensive shirt was torn, and he was holding a bottle of Grandma's vintage wine, the one I was saving for a special occasion. He had smashed the neck off and was drinking it straight. "Diane," he slurred. A smile spread across his face, but it wasn't charming anymore. It was a rictus of hate. "I knew you'd come. The dutiful daughter. The protector." "Get out of my house," I said, raising the tire iron. "Your house?" He laughed. "It's our house. Brenda gave it to me. We're partners." "Brenda is in the car," I said. "She knows you used her. She knows about Kaylee. She knows about the loan shark." His face twitched. "She's a liar. She loves me." "She hates you," I said. "And so do the police. They're coming, Greg. You're trapped." "I'm not trapped." He threw the wine bottle. It shattered against the stone fireplace, splashing red wine like blood across the hearth. "I just need a loan. You have money, Diane. You have so much money. Just give me 50 grand. That's all I need. I'll go to Mexico. You'll never see me again." "I wouldn't give you 50 cents, I said. He lunged. He wasn't a fighter. He was a soft man who relied on manipulation. But desperation gives people strength. He tackled me. We hit the floor hard. The tire iron skittered away. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. "Fix this. You always fix everything. Fix this for me." It was the mantra of my entire life with him. "Fix this, Diane. Pay this, Diane. Handle this, Diane." Something snapped inside me. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I brought my knee up, hard, into his groin. He howled and rolled off me. I scrambled up, grabbing the tire iron. I stood over him, breathing hard. "I am not your fixer," I spat. "I am your executioner." Sirens. I heard them wailing down the gravel road. Beautiful, loud, aggressive sirens. Greg heard them too. The fight drained out of him. He curled into a ball on the rug he had ruined. He started to sob. "Mom," he whimpered. "I want Joyce." It was the most pathetic thing I had ever heard. The sheriff's deputies burst through the door, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon," they yelled at me. I dropped the tire iron. I raised my hands. "He's all yours," I said. They cuffed him. They dragged him out. He was screaming for mercy, screaming for his lawyer, screaming for my mother. Brenda came running in. She saw the destruction. She saw the wine on the fireplace. She saw me, disheveled but standing tall. She hugged me. It was the first time she had hugged me in 10 years without asking for money. "You're bleeding," she said, touching my cheek. I touched my face. Greg must have scratched me. "It's fine," I said. "It's just a scratch. The house will need work." "We'll fix it," Brenda said. "I'll help you. I swear." I looked at her. I wanted to believe her. "We'll see," I said. The next morning, I was back at the county jail. Greg was being held without bail, flight risk, identity theft, assault. I didn't have to go. But I needed to look him in the eye one last time. I needed to know if there were any more surprises. We spoke through the glass. He looked terrible. The withdrawal from alcohol and adrenaline had left him shaking. "Diane," he said, his voice raspy. "Please. Get me a lawyer. The public defender is an idiot." "I'm not here to help you, Greg," I said. "I'm here to ask where the rest of the money is. The 80,000 from the helic. You didn't spend it all in 3 weeks. He smiled, a weak echo of his old smirk. Maybe I buried it. Maybe I'll tell you if you put money on my commissary books. You didn't bury it, I said. You paid someone. Who? He leaned forward. You think you're so smart, Diane. But you don't know half of it. I didn't just borrow from the loan shark. I sold him the deed. My heart stopped. You what? The quitclaim deed Brenda signed, he said. I didn't just use it as collateral. I signed it over to Vinny. For cash. Vinny owns half your cottage, Diane. Good luck evicting him. I stared at him. This was the twist I hadn't seen coming. He had sold a 50% stake in my family legacy to a criminal enterprise. You're lying, I said. Check the county recorder, he laughed. I mailed it on Tuesday. It probably recorded this morning. I stood up. Enjoy prison, Greg. I hope Vinny finds you in there. I walked out, my mind racing. If Vinny, whoever he was, held a recorded deed, I was in a nightmare scenario. I would be co-owners with a mobster. He could force a partition sale. He could force me to sell the cottage to pay him off. I called Robert immediately. We have a problem, I said. I know, Robert said. I just got a call from a lawyer representing Vincenzo Holdings. They're asserting an ownership interest in the lake house. They want to talk. They want extortion, I said. Diane, listen to me. This deed, if Brenda signed it to Greg's LLC and Greg signed it to Vinny, it might be valid on its face. We have to prove the original transfer was fraudulent. Brenda was coerced, I said. She was seduced and lied to. That's hard to prove in real estate court, Robert warned. This could take years. Or, we can buy them out. I am not paying a criminal for my own house. Then get ready for war, Robert said. I drove to Mom's house. I needed to tell her. I needed her to know that her angel had essentially sold us to the mob. When I walked in, Mom was on the phone. She hung up quickly. Who was that? I asked. Nobody, she said, looking guilty. Mom, was that the jail? She started crying. He called me collect. Diane, he sounds so scared. He said he's being beaten up. He needs bail money. There is no bail. I screamed. And even if there was, you have no money. He took it all. I have my jewelry, she whispered. The pieces I hid. I stared at her. She had hidden jewelry from the movers? From the debt collectors? And she was willing to sell it now, not to save her house, but to help him? If you send him 1 penny, I said, my voice trembling with rage, I will walk out that door and I will never speak to you again. I will sue you for complicity in the fraud. I will destroy you, Mom. Do not test me. She shrank back. She had never seen me like this. He sold the cottage to a mobster, Mom, I said. That's what he did. He sold Grandma's house to a thug named Vinny. Her hand flew to her mouth. Grandma's house? Yes. So keep your jewelry. You're going to need it to pay for your funeral, because I'm done. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. It felt more final that way. The next month was a blur of legal motions. Vincenzo Holdings filed a suit for partition, demanding we sell the lake house and split the proceeds. I refused. I hired a forensic document examiner. I had him analyze Brenda's signature on the quitclaim deed. It's genuine, the examiner told me. She signed it. But was she under duress? I asked. I can't tell that from ink, he said. I was losing. The law didn't care about fairness, it cared about paperwork. And Greg had the paperwork. Then, I got a break. Sal, my PI, called me. Vinny isn't just a businessman. He's under federal indictment for racketeering. The feds just seized his assets. Does that include the deed? If this story made your blood boil, or if it gave you the courage to check your own credit report, please hit that like button. It helps the channel, but more importantly, it helps this story reach other women who might need a wake-up call. Subscribe for more stories of justice. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to be the villain to save your family? I want to hear your story. Stay safe, stay smart, and don't let anyone sign your name. It includes everything. The deed is now property of the U.S. government. I laughed. I laughed until I cried. My co-owner wasn't a mobster anymore. It was Uncle Sam. I called Robert. Can we negotiate with the feds? Actually, yes, Robert said. The Department of Justice doesn't want to own a cottage in Michigan. They'll auction the interest. You can bid on it. How much? Appraised value. Probably $150,000 for the half interest. It was a lot of money. It was most of my savings. But it was clean. Do it, I said. Set it up. But there was one loose end. Greg. His trial was starting. And he was subpoenaing Mom to testify for him. He wanted her to say she authorized everything to get him off the fraud charges. I went to see Mom. She was living in the small condo I had rented for her. She looked miserable. You have a subpoena, I said. I have to tell the truth, she said. The truth is he stole from you, I said. If you lie on the stand to protect him, you are committing perjury. And I will provide the evidence that proves you're lying. I will send my own mother to jail if I have to. Why do you hate him so much? She asked. He made mistakes. I don't hate him, I said. I hate what you became when you were with him. You forgot you had a daughter. She looked at me. Really looked at me. I didn't forget, Diane. I was just disappointed. The truth finally came out. Disappointed? You didn't need me, she said. You were always so perfect. So independent. Greg needed me. It felt good to be needed. I needed a mother, I said, tears finally spilling over. I didn't need a dependent. I needed a mom. She started to cry. I'm sorry, Diane. I'm so sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't fix the lost money. But it was a start. Don't testify for him, I said. Testify for yourself. The trial was short. Mom took the stand. She looked at Greg, who smiled at her from the defense table. Mrs. Miller, the prosecutor asked. Did you authorize these transfers? Mom paused. She looked at Greg. Then she looked at me, sitting in the gallery. No, she said clearly. I did not. He stole my trust, and he stole my money. Greg's smile vanished. He slumped in his chair. The verdict was guilty on all counts. Identity theft, wire fraud, forgery. He got 8 years. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse. The air was crisp. It was over. But not quite. I drove to the lake house. I had won the auction. I owned 100% of the property now. I walked through the empty rooms. The floor Greg had ripped up was repaired. The wine stain on the fireplace was scrubbed, though a faint shadow remained. I sat on the porch. My phone rang. It was Brenda. He called me, she said. from prison. Did you answer? No, she said. I blocked the number. Good girl. Diane, thank you. For saving us. Even when we didn't want to be saved. That's what big sisters do, I said. I hung up. I looked out at the lake. I wasn't just a big sister anymore. I wasn't just a daughter. I was the survivor of a domestic war. I had lost a lot. My savings were dented. My family was scarred. But I had regained something I lost years ago, my self-respect. I sipped my coffee. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and triumphant gold. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, alone didn't feel lonely. It felt like victory. Life settled into a rhythm. A quieter rhythm. Mom adjusted to the condo. She joined a book club. She stopped talking about Greg. We had Sunday dinners, but they were different. We split the bill. I didn't pay for everything anymore. Brenda got a promotion at the diner to shift manager. She was paying off her debts, slowly. I focused on my career. I took on new clients, specifically women going through gray divorces. I helped them find hidden assets. I helped them secure their futures. One day, a letter arrived from prison. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Diane. You think you won. But you'll always be alone. At least I felt love once. I read it. I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. I took a lighter from my drawer. I walked to the kitchen sink. I lit the corner of the letter and watched it burn. Ash curled into the drain. I feel love every day, I said to the smoke. I love myself enough to keep you away. I washed the ash away. It's Thanksgiving again. We are at the lake house. The renovation is complete. The kitchen is open and airy, filled with the smell of sage and roasting turkey. Aunt Margaret is here, pouring generous glasses of wine. Mom is peeling potatoes, complaining about her arthritis but smiling. Brenda is setting the table with her kids. Diane! Brenda calls out. Where do you want the centerpiece? In the middle, I say, walking in from the porch. I look at them. It's not a perfect family. There are scars. There are silences where we don't mention the past. But it's real. There is no golden boy charming us with lies. There is no debt hanging over our heads, well, except Brenda's, but she's handling it. I raise my glass. To us, I say. To us, they echo. Mom looks at me. To you, Diane. Thank you. It's the first time she's thanked me without adding a but. I smile. You're welcome. I walk out to the deck to get some air. The lake is calm. I think about the journey. The fear. The anger. The vindication. I realize that the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And I am finally indifferent to Greg. He is a ghost story we tell to warn others. I am the author of the rest of my life. So, that's my story. I didn't just get divorced. I got replaced. I got erased. And then, I got loud. I learned that family isn't about blood, it's about behavior. You can divorce your husband, but sometimes, you have to divorce your family's expectations too. I learned that financial abuse is just as damaging as physical abuse. It steals your future. And I learned that being the strong one is a trap. You have to be the smart one. If you are listening to this, and you feel that pit in your stomach, that feeling that something isn't right with your money, or your partner, or your family dynamic, listen to it. Check the accounts. Read the fine print. Don't sign the paper just to keep the peace. Peace built on a lie is just a ceasefire waiting to break. I'm Diane. I'm a CPA. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. And I am the owner of this house and this life, free and clear. Thank you for listening. And so, this story leaves us with a powerful reminder: resilience is born not from avoiding pain but from confronting it head-on. Diane's journey teaches us that self-worth is not defined by how others perceive us, but by how we choose to stand for ourselves when the world tries to silence or replace us. She showed us the courage it takes to break free from toxic relationships and the strength required to rebuild, even when the damage feels insurmountable. More than just a tale of betrayal and justice, this story illuminates the importance of boundaries, self-respect, and the willingness to fight for what truly matters. It challenges us to question the roles we play in our families, to value our own voices, and to stand firm against manipulation, no matter how close it comes to home. Diane didn't just save her finances, she reclaimed her identity, proving that true liberation begins within. What about you? Have you ever had to make the hard choice to protect yourself or your future? Share your thoughts in the comments or simply type good if this story inspired you to reflect on your own strength. Let's keep the conversation going, because lessons like these deserve to be shared.